welcome back to the techno-communism conversation. I'm going to talk a little bit about transhumanism, because I guess if I'm known for something, it is for being a left transhumanist, and also in response to somebody who I just blocked on Facebook, so it's not really a response, but this kind of slacktivist guy, Christopher Comrade, who runs his mouth off a lot on Facebook. So he clearly thinks that computers play some role in his work. He's using them every day. For example, I don't know that that's to the detriment of his other revolutionary work. It could be. And most of these people are just terminally online. Not that I'm one to throw stones, I've been that person. And he's talking about correctly addressing an issue about the need for legitimate revolutionary scientific socialist thought and action, and the rejection of the other things. In this context, it was the concept of left unity, which is a scam. Any real socialist thinker knows this. Every liberal pretends that it's not the case. But the reason that I blocked him was because this person, who is using a computer every day to kind of be a jagoff, doesn't really think that advanced computing has any role to play in the revolutionary outcome that he professes to be most desirous of. And that's a pretty ahistorical view of Marxist-Leninism. There's never been a moment where Marxist thinkers and Marxist-Leninist thinkers were not pretty well connected to a certain kind of technological determinism, just as people view the transition from feudalism to industrial capitalism to industrial state socialism as necessities for building a people's government of a better kind, the full communist outcome. All of that, none of that means anything without the technology which allows it to come into existence. And a person who denies that advanced computing has a role to play in that equal to that of industrial technology of earlier centuries is a person that's not living in the 20th century. I'm reminded of the books of Richard Wright, where he describes a party member scientific socialists standing on a soapbox, repeating a lot of correct but one-dimensional platitudes, talking points of the communist kind, if you will, without a lot of real depth or analysis behind them, and but nevertheless kind of being verbally abusive to other people that they engage with. That's how I think of this person. I wish them the best, but there's nothing that this person is going to say that is going to change my thinking, and I hope maybe they'll continue to say what they are saying, but not be dismissive of the most powerful revolutionary tool in history, that of advanced computing and a people's intelligence explosion, in contrast to the vile and horrific bourgeois intelligence explosion that's underway. But just as you cannot put a hard line between the development of industrial state capitalism and industrial state socialism, you cannot absolutely describe every single nation as being exclusively one or the other. nor can you place that same demarcation in a timeline. You can't really describe the state of advanced computing in such black and white terms. But I will instead talk a little bit about the transhumanist concepts, transhumanism would be separated from other technologically focused worldviews by a couple of things: an interest in changing the human form, an interest in bringing about something like indefinite lifespan, for example, or other perhaps significant changes to the human form, and a little bit different view of the tech world from even most ardent technologists, something more like this technological determinism tied to advanced computing that I've described. I haven't met real transhumanists. I've met capitalists pretending to be transhumanists. I could give a couple of honorable mentions, but really it's very, very small fraction of the people who are engaging with this word or this set of ideas. But nevertheless, it's an important concept, in my view, the changing of human capacities, because I believe that this superintelligence is a thing, the one thing that we could build in the 5 years that we have left before runaway overheating from capitalism's climate apocalypse seals the fate of humankind in the decades to follow, causing human extinction. And this superintelligence is something that must be built. It must be built by cybernetic socialist soldiers. And I have described one way that it could be built in that time frame, which is the open source large language model high automation workgroup, a workforce multiplier of interconnected language models, which would become the powerful revolutionary weapon for realizing the goals of the transhumanist, an aspirational position. There are no transhumans, there are only transhumanists. There are no biological immortals. There are only people interested in such a thing. And none of that happens human survival or something more like apotheosis without a respect for a humane and sustainable economic system built within the existing scientific socialist frameworks, with an understanding that this cybernetic socialist and cybernetic communist position, just because you haven't heard of it, Christopher Jagoff, does not mean that it's an idea beneath you. And maybe you need to read some more. So this high automation LLM work group used to first and foremost build a thing strong enough to stop capitalism's climate apocalypse, but ultimately achieving similar coups de grace, changing human abilities, extending lifespans, and creating the just and livable world that will endure. I believe that this is a necessity, and I am reminded of the political compass that I found once and modified slightly, and because it contained 2 points, contained many points. It was a political compass describing many ideologies. One of them was transhumanism, down here on the political compass, on the left bottom part, with pieces of shit like Trump. And then way up here, outside at the fringe, the most communist position, we could say, was the hive mind collectivist. All of these transhumanists, if they were real transhumanists, they would be hive mind collectivists, right? But they're much more interested in making a little money or listening to the sound of their own idiot voice than they are in building a livable world. And so, by and large, they are people with a disgusting amount of bourgeois ideology that puts them in this bottom right part. I said bottom left, bottom right part of the political compass rather than this basically leftmost position. And like the transhumanist, the hive mind collectivist is an aspirational position because brain computer interfaces that would allow people to communicate and act in ways that are enhanced beyond human capabilities don't exactly exist yet. If they do exist, I'm not allowed to use them because I'm not sufficiently otherly abled. But there are a few otherly abled people who are connected potentially in this way. A few people who are beginning to have what could be the makings of the true hive mind. But I think of this high automation work group as a proxy hive mind because it allows people to derive some of the benefits from that novel way of working without changing the way that they live so much, which people seem to be quite frightened by. And I would view this, the building of this high automation work group, as a form of cognitive enhancement, so much so that we would say that these somewhat agentic large language models of 2025 that you can download. I've been playing a little more with Llama 3.2, kind of trying to understand it a little bit better, and some other open source models have dropped in recent weeks. This increasingly agentic open source large language model of 2025 is not an equal to human problems or an equal to the highest level of human abilities, but with this interoperating framework of highly agentic um, um, actors steered by human beings in this workforce multiplier form, the sum is effectively greater than its parts. It is a path to superintelligence in 2025, built in such a way that it would be not an existential risk, but something that would be a destroyer of existential risks. A people's AI takeoff. And this workforce multiplier could be used to develop and distribute technologies of other kinds once the problems of capitalism's climate apocalypse and privation are dealt with, which is not a realistic possibility in the bourgeois AI takeoff of the Western military industrial dominated tech sectors or general for profit shite of this technocratic world. And this, but this would allow for the use of the kinds of things that transhumanists talk about, novel forms and extensions of the physical form beyond simply engineering through a single payer health service that is able to treat aging as a reversible condition and can cure other diseases, the bringing about of universal super longevity. This would be considered the most defining feature of a transhumanist, I think, an interest in indefinite lifespan for themselves, by and large. Because of their bourgeois ideology, they're doing less than nothing to bring that about, because they are working on working within the fatally flawed for-profit healthcare system, or otherwise upholding fatally flawed U.S. institutions, if they may be so called. The U.S. is a fascist country. It has not institutions, but abominations. The role of this workforce multiplier in ensuring human betterment overall, or the human betterment that transhumanists take an interest in, which is a thing that makes them controversial, is should not be understated. You should do everything that you can to support open source software and contribute to its development. Make use of it in every device and every way that you are able to, and talk to people about this idea of using open source large language models in this transformative way. Contact me if you want to work on building this nearly full automation. Ultimately, I think a thing that would be transformative in the way that something like a post-scarcity outcome would be transformative. But none of that can be done based on, if you're working from bad fundamentals, the fundamentals of the neoliberal mandate and militaristic mandate of the United States, or the equally flawed capitalist mandates of other forms of state capitalism, less omnicidal than the fascist United States, but nevertheless not capable of bringing about this outcome. I had met some Israeli life extension scientists who definitely knew something about science, and definitely wanted to use the single payer public health service in that country to advance this prospect of universal super longevity in one country and ultimately all countries. But I doubt very much that this fascist puppet state of the United States will be the place that gives this gift to the rest of the world. This can be done by people who are actually not military fascist country with some social democratic features, but genuinely state socialist countries that have taken on cybernetic socialist qualities and thus are equal to the task, or organizers of a scale comparable to the actions of that of a nation state, like this proxy hive mind which I've described. If you have 3,000 people in this proxy hive mind or open source large language model workforce multiplier, you have the makings of something that could do benefit to a city or humanitarian undertaking. If you have 30,000, you have something that could well handle some humanitarian undertakings or so. If you have 300,000, you're on your way to something that could begin to be genuinely civilizationally transformative. If you have 3 million, I think you have something that is strong enough at that point, in the way that, say, the nation of China might be strong enough in that same time frame to put the necessary pressure on omnicidal industrial state capitalist sectors to stop omnicidal industrial state capitalism. If you have 30 million, then I think that you have a work group that is able to bring about universal super longevity as well as stop the capitalist climate apocalypse. If you have 300 million, you're getting into the territory of pushing the needle up a little bit on the Kardashev scale, moving into a theorized area of industrial capacities beyond our current status. And if you have 3 billion, hey baby, rock and roll. That's a world of genuine superintelligence where 1/3 of human beings or so are connected in this way. That's a world where no existential risk, not capitalism's climate apocalypse, not the heat death of the universe, maybe the heat death of the universe, but all things in between might well be addressed in a timely way. This automation framework, the workforce multiplier, offers an avenue for realizing the goals of Marxist technological determinism, ideas that can be overstated but should not be ignored. There is no concept of Marxism without industrial technology. There's no concept of economics without industrial technology. and also the goals of the aspiring transhumanist. All of this requires not just state socialist type action, but cybernetic socialist type action if we are to survive as a species in the years left to us. As again I said, we have 5 years before we reach runaway for eating from capitalism's climate apocalypse. By not excluding the ideas of enhancing human capabilities or allowing people who are no different from Trump in their political ideology to dominate this conversation about enhancing human capabilities, we allow for people to not just dream of a world where death and disease are brought to heel, but build it using existing technology in a way that is an appropriate use of that technology, which we cannot say of any sector. We are really seeing the appropriate use of any technology. But we can build easily, in my view, under the revolutionary cybernetic socialist action, grown to a certain scale, as I described, this thing, universal super longevity, that is indefinite lifespan for all who want it. Perhaps you wake up and say, I don't like to go on living. That's a suicidal position. People will casually joke about this because the concept of living longer than 100 years is not a realistic one, so why not make a joke of it? But there's no one who doesn't go to the doctor now and doesn't try to extend their lifespan now if they are able. So the dismissive attitude toward indefinite lifespan is not a serious one in my view. Not one that anyone would really, people would say, I don't want to live beyond 100 years. Well, I don't think you've really been 100 years old and actually considered that situation. But it is essential to approach all of this from the position of a livable world, which requires a humane and sustainable framework. And that humane and sustainable framework does not exist without a humane and sustainable economic framework. That does not exist without action of a revolutionary kind, of an insurgent kind, on the part of anti-imperialists, anti-capitalists, anti-fascists in great number. Because if that is not done, then we will miss the deadline of 5 years to transform these industrial sectors of state capitalism that are killing the planet into the state socialist or comparable framework like that derives from this proxy hive mind as I've described it. I have said before that this proxy hive mind is more anarcho-syndicalist than state socialist, but there should be an asterisk by that because the necessity for building this thing that is amorphous and outside of state action is a strategic necessary, because one thing that the fascist United States, better than any other state in the past, has been able to do is utterly crush any undertaking on the part of state socialists. You could list literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of such situations, but to me the most relevant one is also an imperfect example of state socialism, Salvador Allende's Chile. It was not the truest of state socialist forms that ever existed, but it was a democratically elected a state that had the makings of genuine state socialism. More to the point, it was one that between the years of 1971 and 1973 had begun the building of a technological planned economy, which would have transformed people's thinking and the ability to run the workings of a state. This is often said by capitalists who have no real interest in these ideas, that the thing that the USSR was lacking would have been the automated logistics or supply chain management systems that are now used by entities like Walmart and Amazon for the purposes of the wealth extraction for the purposes of exploitation. And mostly the people who observe this are people who are more interested in that exploitation than in that thing that they allude to, where the USSR could have functioned on this cybernetic socialist principle, because these are the people who uphold the same system that was being upheld when the United States illegally overthrew the Allende government and imposed a Pinochet regime, a fascist state imposed by U.S. fascism. This was done through the workings of U.S. intelligence agencies. The CIA-run world has not been a president in living memory who wasn't a CIA asset, basically. When state socialism, a thing which also inspired the world and transformed it, came into existence, the United States had no intelligence service. A couple of people working in a little office doing very little. And that was better. It was a less fascist world at that time. But by the 1970s, we were well into this CIA-run world, and so people said, well, this thing, cybernetic socialism and the state-run technological economy could transform this world for the better, but that's not good for us because we are warmongers and kleptocrats. So we have to destroy it and make sure that people don't start thinking in these terms, which is exactly what they did. And I believe that if this sort of thing had not been done in the many hundreds of instances that it was done by the fascist United States, we would have already seen the AI takeoff, a people's AI takeoff of the kind that I've described, not the bourgeois AI takeoff, of the bogus AI takeoff that Western technologists like to crow about. At around the time when people imagined this, when they talked about it in the broadest strokes in the early 20th century, around the year 2000. That was a time when modernists looked forward and said, the year 2000, can you imagine what we will have? Those people were basing that on a socialistic trajectory and a vaguely cybernetic socialistic outlook. And that was stolen from you. And it will continue to be stolen from you unless you do this revolutionary thing. And make no mistake, humans will be extinct, with or without blowhards, like our friend Christopher Comrade, doing whatever they are doing, unless we do this more efficacious thing. And if we do that, we will see tremendous, tremendous outcomes. I think things that would make universal super longevity or a public health service that treats aging as a disease, bringing about indefinite lifespan for all who want it on this planet. This people's superintelligence and its capacities would make that pale by comparison. The artificial intelligence singularity is nigh, and wonders to behold beyond imagining. And on that fateful day you will rise, and all humankind will become as one, for you see,